Hi everybody, it's Annette from The Art of Intuition, and today we are going to talk about what some will call piercing the veil between higher realm realities and the human realities and what starts to happen there. So we're going to talk a little bit about why it feels easier a little bit in the beginning to kind of connect up and some of the reasons behind it. Now there's a zillion reasons behind everything, so we're going to hit on some of them as to why things feel quicker in the beginning and why that is. Now, I've touched on this a little bit in a couple other videos. We're going to recap a few of those. When you're talking about moving out of human realities, which a lot of people call that piercing the veil, right? You're starting to pierce through the veil that kind of covers your third eye. So you don't really see everything that goes on, right? You just see the physical reality and you don't see any of the energetic realities going on behind the scenes. You don't understand that every action you do creates something else and what you're creating every day. That's why when I say you're not really responsible, like we're not really responsible for what we create as a human, in a way that's true. We're not responsible for what we create as a human because we really don't understand what we're doing. Now, there comes a time when once you do understand what you're doing, then we have to take great care on what we continue to create. And that's when things get a little more immediate as to what can happen as far as karmic retribution once we start recreating stuff and we kind of know better, but we do it anyway because we're still trying to work through programming. So there is a point to that. But in the beginning, you're going to find that things happen a little bit quicker, but there's a reason it has to. When you're in your human consciousness, when you're in your human realities and you're just starting to have that, some people call it an awakening, some people just will call it, some people call it pre-ascension. Normally I call it like awakening, pre-ascension, ascension. So I kind of break it out, I guess, into three different parts. Because your awakening can be anything that kind of shakes you out of the human realities. It's kind of this, it's almost like your consciousness gets plucked out because you get so disenchanted and disillusioned with the human realities that you just don't want to be in them anymore. They all feel like they weren't, like you were sold a bill of goods that you never got. So you either get everything you almost wanted and then you don't at the end, or you have everything you thought you wanted, but you're still not happy. And you start just feeling very disenchanted with everything. So it either happens one way or the other. Sometimes you might have a multitude of both in a sense. You start feeling disenchanted and then you kind of maybe get something else. Human world's always going to try to get you back in. So it's going to show you this, show you that. Say, hey, come over here and you can have this. Or hey, come over here, you can have that. It's going to dangle that carrot, whatever that carrot is for you. Whether it's human love, money, success, fame, it doesn't really matter what it is. But it'll try to dangle something to kind of get you back in. Because the human realities are only as strong, those collectives are only as strong as the people in those collectives. The minute people start exiting those collectives, then that's when things sort of go sideways for the human collectives, because that's what holds the collectives up. And if you don't have enough people holding the collectives up, then you can't really have the realities in a sense, right? The whole thing starts to crumble. And you see a lot of that now when human realities start to crumble because so many people are leaving them, even if they don't realize that's what they're doing, and they're leaving them bit by bit. COVID was a great example of how people were kind of yanked out of human realities, and now they just start leaving them bit by bit. It's not as quick, it's not this quick extraction that's shown in the movie The Matrix. It's kind of more, it's a more gradual thing. You kind of get pulled out bit by bit. You need something to show you there's something else. And that's why when you first pierce the veil, things seem to start happening quicker. You might dream something and it starts happening like really quickly. Like the next day, something happens that, oh my God, I should have just dreamed that. That's a big one for a lot of people. Or you might start getting into books that talk about energy. And I don't like the word manifesting. It's a very human word. Manifesting something. You get into the book, The Secret books, where that was work that was, I'm going to say channel work because it was channel work. It was someone who channeled what they deemed as something else, even though it was just another aspect of them. They just hadn't quite embodied it yet. So they kind of had still kept it separated off, because channel work does sell quicker than if you embodiment work does. Channeling is kind of a word, because when someone says they channel something, some people give it no credibility, other people give it all the credibility. Whereas if you say you embodied something, then that kind of can have no credibility in either way, depending on the consciousness that people are from, right? Where they're kind of the space they're in. Because when you're channeling, which is a big important part of kind of fourth dimensional realities and starting to anchor stuff in, you have to be able to channel. So if you've never channeled before, I suggest you start doing that and enjoy that process, because you're just connecting up to different aspects of yourself, right? You can't channel something that's not you. So all the other stories people have about channeling are just stories. You can only channel yourself, different versions of yourself. That's all you have access to. But you'd be surprised how much access you have, but it's all always going to be you. Just like when you talk about, people talk about entities or seeing ghosts, and a lot of that stuff starts piercing the veil for a lot of people. That's why children see a lot more energetically, because they have not been 100% veiled yet, right? They still have that connection. They're not veiled. So they see different things. People just think it's something separate. They think it's, oh, that's like something else. Anything that you see, it's still an aspect of you. If you want to look at something as like a ghost, it's still an aspect of you. It's something in your field, but it's still you, right? Everything's you. Everything is you. I can't stress that enough. So don't be afraid of what you see. Don't be afraid of what you kind of get confronted with a lot of times. It's all just you. But you're going to find once it starts kind of happening, it happens really fast, because it has to. Think about it like this. If you've completely been kind of suffocated, gonna get a little Game of Thronesy, when you're like being suffocated, which is kind of what human realities are. You're completely cut off from consciousness, from source consciousness. You're completely cut off, and someone pokes a hole in the bag. You're gonna feel like all of a sudden you almost have like a second life in a sense, and it feels so good to just be able to breathe air, even if it's just a little bit. But because you're so unconscious, it feels like it's massive. And you start to see all these things that really happen all the time. We just never notice them. But it's just getting a little bit of a piercing of the veil, and all of a sudden things start opening up. But it has to happen that way. If not, you would never want to exit human realities, because you wouldn't believe there was something else. Humans have to see it. We all had to see it. If we didn't see anything, we wouldn't leave. We'd still stay in. We just go back in. We would be like, well, there's nothing out here, I'm going to go back in. So if you see anything, telepathy starts going crazy, which is a human word, but we're going to use it, because you're really just reading your field, but all of a sudden you're picking up on stuff you never picked up on before. Everyone starts to get their superpowers. I remember when I first became super clairaudient, I don't know how I'd even say that now. And it was just all the time. I could hear everything. And it's kind of, in a way, it's kind of really, it's not really disorienting. You just kind of get used to it. And now I can kind of tune it out if I don't want to listen to it. In a sense, I can tune it out. People think just because you can do it, you're always kind of in everyone's mind or in everyone's head all the time. But you kind of start to sort through a lot of that stuff, and it really just becomes a distraction. Unless it's something you need to tune into, you'll know. But if not, you kind of just don't bother. So just be aware that in the beginning it felt quicker, and it has to feel quicker. Then you get, because we're trying to, but then it gets harder. And you feel like it's going to get harder because you become so unveiled, and you're trying to create higher dimensional realities, and always higher, that it's like, it feels like it starts to take longer. And you're like, but it was so easy in the beginning. I got so expansive in the beginning, because once again, if you're not expanded at all, any amount of expansion feels huge. So you feel like you're 10 feet tall when you start embodying in some of your higher aspects. You feel like you can see everything and hear everything and know everything, even if it's just a teeny bit of what we can see and know and understand. And the higher you go consciously, because we're always going to be kind of bringing our body into higher realities. We're always maneuvering from a higher consciousness than our body is in. So we're kind of going top down, right? We're going to be going top down, and we're also going to be going bottom up. But we're going to be going top down because we can only kind of manage our reality from a higher consciousness than our reality, our body sets in, right? But you also have to start building all over again. So you also got to go bottom up and rebuild all your realities from a soul-aligned reality and not a human-aligned reality, which is not human integrity now. Now it's soul integrity, and that's totally different. It's a different way to live. It's a different way to be. You seem extreme to a lot of people on the things you'll do to anchor in soul realities, how long you will perceive to be waiting for them, how long you'll put your energy into something, what you will not feed your energy into. how you'll keep doing something that a human consciousness would say it doesn't seem to be working. Why do you keep doing it? Because you know that's what you're supposed to do. Like yesterday, for example, I have one key to the house I live in, and I was like, oh, I got to get 2 keys. So I'm gonna need 2 keys. And it was on my mind so much. It had not been on my mind for years, but all of a sudden it was like, you have to get this key done. You have to get it done today. And it was pressing on me so much. And that's how I kind of will explain it to people. It's just pressing. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go. I'm going to do it. And I did it as soon as I saw that I was supposed to do it. Now, I might not need it tomorrow, but I'm going to need it quickly. Or I might not need it for 6 months, but that could also be quickly in the human, because our higher realities are a little backwards. But it's already done. So I don't have to worry about that being a hurdle later on, because at some point I will utilize that second key. So I had to have it here. But if I ignored that, I'm also kind of holding up my next reality. Like for whatever reason, that was the key to opening up my next reality. So everything's kind of metaphoric in a sense, even though it might seem like it's not related. When you feel pressed to do something, we have to go do it. But it starts to take longer because you're anchoring in whole realities. You have to hold the consciousness long enough. You're not just seeing bits and pieces. You're not just tuning into things here and there. You're not just starting to tilt your head when you talk because you're tuning into a different frequency. You're not just starting to dream what you're going to deem as the future because it's not here yet. You're not just starting those things. You're now at a place where you've embodied a lot of those things, and you're still embodying other higher consciousness things. And you're also trying to bring these realities in. You're trying to anchor in the higher realities by getting your body into that frequency. You're trying to rebuild. So you're starting all over again, in a sense, building soul-aligned realities, not human-aligned realities, with no support from human realities, no support from human consciousness, no support from human systems. And that can really feel challenging sometimes because you can't have that type of support anymore. Because in a sense, if you do, you're feeding the old. So don't feel disenchanted if it's looked easier in the beginning. And I can always tell when people are in that phase, because they're kind of in that phase where everything feels like it's coming so easy, because they haven't really gotten into the meat of clearing a lot of the programming yet and looking at how much we hold back, how many limits we have, what we have to really learn to trust that things will be there in the moment we're going to need them. And a lot of times we get to that moment constantly. So we learn to trust it. It'll be there when I need it. I don't know what it's going to be, but it's going to be there when I need it. It's probably not going to come the way I think. And it's not going to look like how I think it's going to look, but it's going to be exactly what I need when I need it. So just keep those things in your space, right? Yeah, I don't want to say on your mind, because we're really trying to anchor in. You're going to start to anchor in higher mind consciousness, and you're not going to have human consciousness anymore, but you have to have your heart open long enough to be able to anchor in higher mind consciousness, where you can do and see, read the field, and know exactly what you're supposed to do next. And sometimes we go through periods where we don't know what we're supposed to do next, because they're kind of in between frequencies. We've talked about being in between, not really tuning into the new one yet, but kind of detaching from the old one yet. Whether we're bailing out of a reality or we're going to be bailing water out of the reality until it's time for us to jump into the next one. The human won't jump unless it sees something else. That's why in the beginning you see something else. That's the only reason, really. You see so little in human consciousness that when you see anything, it feels like the whole world opened up to you. You feel like you just, landed into the middle of like a Lord of the Rings fantasy world in a sense. But it has to feel that way. If not, you wouldn't go. None of us would have left if we didn't see something else. So it'll feel easier in the beginning. It will feel like it takes longer later on, because you're anchoring in bigger realities. You're not just looking and piercing a veil. You're now, the whole veil's been turned down or torn away. And it is kind of like you're tearing it away as you break the programming down, and all the stuff that's in the way of that, all the emotions in the way of that. That's why it's a very emotionally heavy clearing too. And you're starting to see all the other things going on. And then you got to bring those things here. So it is not as quick as it would appear in the beginning. So don't get disheartened if you feel like it's taking a long time, because it can take a long time. It can take years to anchor in some realities that you saw. Just when you see you're supposed to do something, do it. You're not going to be doing it for the reasons you think you're doing it for, but when you see it, do it. Don't procrastinate. See the reality, move through it, and keep going. We can't get kind of hung up in waiting to see it. Because when you get to a certain point, you're not going to be able to see it anymore. You'll be able to see it, but it won't be physically in your face. You're going to have to just know it and trust it, because that's really what rips away the rest of that veil, is to trust that it'll be there when I need it. So, okay. Keep practicing the art of intuition.